Welcome to this deep dive. We're going to be unlocking the mysteries of advanced conversational hypnosis. You've sent over some really fascinating material on this, and it seems like you're interested in exploring a side of hypnosis that goes beyond that stereotypical imagery and delves into its true potential.
Yeah, it definitely seems like you're drawn to the idea of hypnosis as a tool for deep, lasting transformation, not just for entertainment.
Absolutely. One of the things that immediately jumped out at me was this idea of ditching the elaborate scripts and metaphors. We usually associate those with hypnosis. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Absolutely. Advanced conversational hypnosis thrives on simplicity. It recognizes that the power for change lies within the client's own unconscious mind. So instead of relying on complex techniques or predetermined scripts, this approach focuses on guiding the client to tap into their own inner wisdom.
So it's less about the hypnotist directing the show and more about guiding the client to direct their own internal experience.
Exactly. Think of it as a collaborative exploration rather than a command performance. The therapist is there to guide, to facilitate. But ultimately, it's the client's unconscious that holds the key to unlocking lasting transformation.
That's so interesting. And it actually makes a lot of sense. I mean, if we're talking about creating lasting change, shouldn't it come from within?
Exactly. One of the things you highlighted in the material you sent was this idea of unconscious moments being critical in conversational hypnosis. These are those subtle cues in our communication, a slight hesitation, a change in tone, even a gesture. In everyday conversation, we often miss these, but they can be incredibly revealing.
Okay, so how do you even begin to recognize those unconscious moments in the flow of a conversation?
It's about paying attention to the incongruencies, the things that don't quite line up. For example, let's say a client says they're perfectly happy in their relationship, but you notice a slight frown or a tightening of their jaw when they mention their partner's name. That's an unconscious moment that might reveal something deeper.
That's fascinating. So it's like you're looking for those little cracks in the surface that hint at what's going on beneath.
Precisely. And the beauty of this approach is that it sees the client's unconscious mind as the wellspring of solutions, not the hypnotherapist.
Which is incredibly empowering,
Uh,
right? It puts the client in the driver's seat of their own transformation.
Absolutely. And it challenges this common misconception that you need to be in a super deep trance for therapy to be effective.
Mm.
I imagine you might have encountered this idea
Oh,
before.
absolutely. It's like the classic image of hypnosis, the dangling pocket watch, the person going completely under.
Exactly. That kind of deep trance can be useful in certain contexts like stage hypnosis. But when we're talking about therapeutic change, it's not about how deeply someone goes under. It's about how effectively the unconscious mind is engaged.
That makes sense. It's
Yeah,
about accessing those deeper parts of ourselves, not just shutting down the conscious mind.
precisely. In fact, some of the most profound shifts can occur in very light states of trance, even when the client is fully aware of their surroundings.
So if it's not about the depth of the trance, how do you know if conversational hypnosis is actually working?
That's a great question. And it brings us to another key difference between this approach and traditional hypnotherapy. You see, traditional hypnotherapy often uses what are called convincers, techniques designed to prove the client is in a hypnotic state.
Like making someone's arm feel heavy or light.
Exactly. But conversational hypnosis says, so what? Even if a client displays all the classic signs of a deep trance, it's meaningless unless it translates into real change in their life.
So instead of those convincers, conversational hypnosis focuses on actual change happening within the session itself. That's what really sets it apart. Do you have an example of what that looks like in practice?
Absolutely. Let's say someone comes in with a fear of public speaking, a pretty common one. Instead of just trying to induce a deep trance, a conversational hypnotherapist might guide the client to identify the root of that fear. Maybe it stems from a childhood experience of being humiliated or laughed at. Then they'd work with the client's unconscious to reframe that experience. They might help the client access a memory of feeling confident and supported, for example.
So they're not trying to make the fear disappear, they're helping the client shift their perspective on it.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. The therapist might then guide the client to imagine themselves in a future public speaking scenario, but this time equipped with these new empowering beliefs. And within the session itself, the client might notice their anxiety, lessening their posture, changing even their internal dialogue, becoming more positive.
Wow, that's incredible. They're literally testing the transformation in real time. It's like that in-session test becomes a proof of concept.
You got it. It's about gauging actual change, not just inducing a hypnotic state. And those in-session breakthroughs, those are the real indicators of progress. They're not reliant on some external measure of trance depth.
That makes a lot of sense. You're seeing if the change is actually happening internally where it matters most.
Exactly. And another fascinating aspect of conversational hypnosis is the power of saying less. One of the sources you shared mentioned a hypnotherapist witnessing a profound breakthrough in a client simply by saying, "And you slept
Oh,
in."
wait, that's it? No elaborate metaphors or scripts, just and you loop in.
That's the power of this approach. By guiding the client's attention to their own unconscious processes, the therapist creates space for profound shifts to occur naturally. It's about trusting that inner wisdom to find its own solutions.
It almost sounds like the therapist is stepping back and letting the client's unconscious take the lead.
In a way, yes. It's about relinquishing control and allowing the process to unfold organically. Remember, in conversational hypnosis, the therapist isn't there to fix the client. They're there to guide the client to heal themselves.
I like that. It's like the therapist is a skilled mountain guide, not carrying the climber up the mountain, but showing them the way and trusting them to find their own path.
That's a great analogy. And this leads us to another crucial point: therapy. The actual therapeutic relationship is still at the heart of this approach. It's not just about techniques, it's about the therapist's ability to connect with the client on a deep level, to understand their unique story, and to address the root causes of their issues.
So it's not just about getting someone to stop smoking, it's about understanding why they smoke in the first place. We have to go deeper.
Precisely. It's about uncovering those deeper emotional patterns, those limiting beliefs, those past experiences that might be driving the behavior. One of the sources you sent used the example of a client who quits smoking but then develops a nail-biting habit a few months later. This suggests that the underlying issue, perhaps stress or anxiety, hasn't been addressed.
That makes a lot of sense. So how does conversational hypnosis address those root causes?
It goes back to what we were talking about earlier, unconscious moments. By paying close attention to the client's nonverbal cues, their language patterns, the subtle shifts in their energy, the therapist can start to piece together the deeper story that lies beneath the surface. They become detectives of the unconscious mind.
Wow, that's such a powerful image. It's like they're looking for clues that the client might not even be aware of themselves.
Exactly.
No.
And once those root causes are identified, the therapist can use a variety of techniques, always tailored to the individual client, to help them reframe those experiences, shift those limiting beliefs, and ultimately rewrite their own stories.
So it's less about imposing change and more about facilitating self-discovery, empowering the client to tap into their own inner healer.
Absolutely. And this can be incredibly liberating for the client. It takes the pressure off them to perform in therapy, allowing them to relax into the process, knowing that the answers they seek are already within them. It's a powerful shift in perspective.
It sounds like conversational hypnosis really challenges so many of the traditional notions of hypnosis.
It does, doesn't it? And yet, at its core, it's all about accessing the power of the unconscious mind. That's always been the foundation of hypnosis, even if it's been obscured by theatrics and misconceptions. You had some really astute observations in your notes about that.
Well, one thing that really struck me was the idea that the stories we tell ourselves, our conscious narratives often have very little to do with the reality of our unconscious minds. There can be a huge disconnect.
That's such a profound insight. And it really highlights the potential of conversational hypnosis to help us bridge that gap between our conscious narratives and the deeper truths held within our unconscious minds. It's about helping us align with our own inner wisdom to live more authentically and powerfully from a place of self-understanding and acceptance.
That's a really powerful idea. So we've talked about ditching the scripts, those critical unconscious moments, the importance of the therapeutic relationship, and the power of less is more. What else makes conversational hypnosis unique?
Well, in addition to its emphasis on in-session testing to ensure tangible breakthroughs, this approach also stresses the importance of rigorously testing the effectiveness of the therapy itself. It's about making sure that those breakthroughs aren't just fleeting experiences, but actually translate into lasting change in the client's life.
That makes a lot of sense. You want to make sure the changes stick and not just happening in the therapist's office.
Exactly. It's not enough to just feel better in the moment. We're aiming for lasting transformation. That's where the real power of this work lies.
So how do you bridge that gap? How do you make sure those breakthroughs become part of the client's everyday life?
That's where the conversational hypnotherapist's role really shines. Even after the session ends, they might give the client homework, specific exercises or practices to help integrate what they've learned into their daily life.
So it's about equipping them with tools and strategies they can use on their own.
Precisely. And it doesn't end there. They'll often follow up with clients to see how they're doing, how they're applying those tools, and whether further sessions are needed.
It's like they're giving the client a set of keys to unlock their own potential, and then making sure they know how to use them long after they leave the therapist's office.
That's a great way to put it. It's about empowering the client to become their own best therapist, to continue the journey of self-discovery and transformation on their own.
This has been incredibly eye-opening. I have to say, my perspective on hypnosis has really shifted. It's not about magic or mind control, but about tapping into our own inner resources for healing and growth.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we all have this incredible capacity for change within us. And sometimes all it takes is a skilled guide to help us unlock that potential.
Well, as we wrap up our deep dive into conversational hypnosis, I'm left with one thought-provoking question. If our thoughts and beliefs shape our reality, what untapped potential could we unleash by learning to communicate directly with the unconscious mind, the very source of those beliefs?
That's a powerful question, and one worth exploring further. Perhaps conversational hypnosis, with its emphasis on collaboration, empowerment, and unlocking our inner wisdom, holds a key to accessing that untapped potential.
It certainly seems like a path worth exploring. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us. It's been a fascinating journey into the world of advanced conversational hypnosis.
You're most welcome. It was a
Yeah.
pleasure to delve into this with you.